I have many sayings, and one of them is a quote by Joan of Arc that says, "I am not afraid. I was born to do this." I have the privilege of hanging out with a lot of younger women, and just when they're thinking about their career and their path, and like you're talking about, I can't do anything. I can barely raise these children, and saying, but who are you? Who are you born to be? We're looking for who we are. We need to be brave to be ourselves in this world, because it can be not for women, this world. And we need the community.
Welcome to Business Origin Stories. I'm Amy Schutte, your guide to crafting a magnetic message for a profitable business. This is the podcast for you if you're ready to claim the transformative power of your own origin story and use it to create a brand that finally stands out. We're here to level up, but more importantly, I'm here to help you elevate your influence, your community, and your impact on the world. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. And remember, the stories you tell yourself are your greatest currency.
You know what I absolutely love? I love when women have lived so many lives and then pivot and try something new and start to really step into their light and their new sense of being. Today, I'm talking to Lesa Engelthaler, who is a speaker and an author who has written for publications such as the Dallas Morning News and Christianity Today. She is passionate about empowerment for women, and so for over 10 years, she's collaborated with House of Hope to help women and girls in difficult situations. And most recently, she wrote a book, a children's book. It's called Joan of Art. This book is kind of taken on a whole new meaning, and she's been taking this book around on her book tour and reading at different places. She started to realize that it doesn't just mean a lot to a lot of the children who are reading it, but it's resonating with a lot of the women in the audience. And so we dive into a little bit of that today. So this is a really fun conversation about publishing a book, writing a book, but there's a much deeper message here. And Lesa is such a phenomenal person to give that message to people. I'm so excited Lesa's here. And we're going to just dive in. Welcome to the Business Origin Stories podcast. Lesa, thank you so much for being with me today.
My pleasure. I'm excited.
It's so nice to meet. Can you tell everyone where you are right now?
I live in Dallas, Texas, and it's like 103 today. So it's super pleasant and not really. So that's what we do in Texas. We do summer well.
Are you from Texas originally?
I actually was born in Texas and then lived, because of my dad's job. I come from the generation, like when he moved up, we actually moved. And so I've lived California, the East Coast, I've lived Puerto Rico, and then circled back here as an adult for my husband to go to graduate school. And then we never left. So so literally a lifetime.
If Texas wants you, it will have you.
It just seemed to be that way. And now, which is the best part of my life, is that I have 5 grandchildren and they live here. So it can be 103 and I don't care. I like hanging out with them. So yeah, great.
Well, we're going to talk about your grandkids today because we're going to talk about you wrote this book. It's called Joan of Art. One of my dear friends gave it to me for my kids and I loved it. And I was like, he's like, oh, I know her. He's your cousin? Is that
my cousin?
He's your cousin? And I was like, well, I want to talk to her on a podcast. So that's why you're here. I want to talk about this, but can you give everyone just kind of the background of who you are, what you do, and then, we'll talk about this book and this bigger picture book here.
I love the question of what you do. And I think like probably every woman, I do a lot of things, and I love it that way. I love that. I think it's a huge honor and a privilege to have multiple things that I do and to have side hustle and to be working on this. And not that these are in order, but I have, as I call it, the day job, which is it's perfect for me. I am an executive recruiter for nonprofit organizations. And so I look for leadership to transform education, arts, human services organizations, around the country, primarily in Dallas, because that's where I volunteer and that's where I have relationships. It's a perfect fit for me because I want to do good and I want to talk to people who want to do good in the world too. So that's my day job. My career before doing recruiting I was a journalist and continue to be a journalist for our local newspaper, the Dallas Morning News, and several publications. And so I had that writing kind of bent, an artist that's a writer bent. And then I have, as I referred to earlier, lucky person to be the grandmother of 5 little kids that are local. And they just, this next generation, they have got it. They are so sharp. They're just amazing to be around with. So I take that very seriously as another part of my job. I volunteer. I love great causes and being involved in good work a lot with women and girls. And so I do that. And then I wrote this book. It kind of was a coming together of the journalism, but then also reading so many amazing children's books, and then thinking, what do I want my grandchildren? And we raised 2 sons. So I didn't have girls when I was parenting. And then we have 3 granddaughters. So that's even, it's just the ultimate, to be around girls and listen to what is in their head. And so wanted to write a book for children. And I love history and I love thinking about women from the past. And I don't want that to be lost for boys and girls, for them to see the heroes of the past. So I wrote, as you said, the book, Joan of Art. It is so beautiful. And I didn't illustrate it. Kids always ask me, did you draw it? I'm like, no, I could barely write it. So I had a great illustrator that illustrated it. And it's teaching children about the saint and the warrior, Joan of Arc, but in a more fun way, and also teaching them about becoming who they were meant to be, because she just was called to be a warrior as a child, and became one. And she's famous for that. So I wanted to teach them, but for it to be, as my granddaughter says, for it to not be boring, to teach them in a manner that was more fun. So that's kind of me, and what I do, and super blessed, to have this kind of life. So thank you.
I love meeting multi-passionate women doing amazing things. And my kids are young. I've got my oldest just turned 8. So I've got an 8 and a 4-year-old. And I always love meeting women on the other side of my season, because it just reminds me, this is such a short season and there's so much big, juicy, creative life that can happen later too. It doesn't always have to fit in the margins of raising kids and doing business. And so thank you for giving us that big picture of you, because I think it's a great reminder to everyone, no matter what stage they're in, that there's so much good life ahead and you can do anything and change careers and write a book at different ages and stages. So I love that.
It's true. Yes.
Talk to me about this book, though, because I think this book is much more than a children's book. I think you're finding that as you're marketing it, as people are receiving it. I know when I read it, maybe just give everyone just a quick overview of what the book is. It is a very beautiful book. And my boys liked it, but I think I liked it more because it felt like a kind of a rebel call as well. So maybe talk to us a little bit about this book and what gave you, why Joan of Arc? Where did that, out of all the women in history that you could have picked, how did you get here? So let's go there.
Yeah. I think, I have many sayings over my computer that, encourage me to do the things. And one of them is a quote by Joan of Arc that says, "I am not afraid. I was born to do this." And I say that to, I have the privilege of hanging out with a lot of younger women, and just, when they're thinking about their career and their path, and like you're talking about, I can't do anything, I can barely, raise these children, and so talking about stages and stuff like that, and saying, but, who are you? Who are you born to be? And so it's something that's been a theme of my life. And I've been able to talk to women in lots of other, countries. And we are all the same, from Rwanda to Nicaragua, and from 8-year-olds to, 80-year-old women, we're looking for who we know who we are. We need to be brave to be ourselves in this world, because it can be not for women, this world. And we need the community. For Joan of Arc, since I was a girl, I thought she was so amazing. And, just that she at 12, if you don't know, or if, your listeners don't know, at 12, Joan of Arc, she was not educated. She was a farm girl, and she heard from God, that she was going to lead her country against the enemy. Well, you can imagine how that went over, in her community. Even the priest said, you need a spanking, or, there's these kind of things. And so she just pushed it down. And, as God would do, he kept talking to her. And at 16, I think she actually finally just said, I have to do what God called me to do. And so she went to the king. And of course, he dismissed her. She said, I need an army, to fight so it's just a story of just like, you cannot believe the courage. She cut her hair to look like a boy, to even be able to she learned to ride a horse. She learned, to use a sword. I mean, what courage, what tenacity, so I just always was like, oh my gosh, she's my saint, she's my idol. And so in talking to my grandchildren, I can tell that they have a short attention span, and also talking to them about something that Joan was martyred for what she did. She actually won again. It's a miracle. She won, and then she was martyred, and that's why she's a saint today, because of what she did for her country. That's a hard story. At 19 to think, oh, she was burned at the stake at 19. Those are hard stories to hear. So how can you get a story like that across? Even today, me telling my grandchildren stories that I want them to know. I know I have to do it quick. It has to be amusing. It has to be, beautiful. And so that was I wanted to write a book talking about some of the heroes of my childhood, and she was one of them. And so I started with her. And then I'm in a writers guild of women, and several of them are children's authors. And so they talked to me about making it, really short. And as we say in writing, taking out the boring parts. So that's why I wrote the book. And then the business of publishing is just a whole nother question. And, very interesting. I love to learn. And it was a learning experience.
Ooh, okay, let's put a pin in that, because I want to talk about that. I do a lot of the people I know this eventually in my future, everyone has a book in them or wants to write something. And so I'm really interested in. But I want to come back to this Joan of Art, your book, because it's a beautiful story. It's about this little girl who wants to be an artist, or she is an artist. She's a little artist. She's named after Joan of Arc. And so she's trying to live up to this warrior heroine in her life, and she's not quite ready to admit that she wants to be an artist, because she feels like she needs to be a warrior. So, and at the end, she claims what she wants to be with the help of her friends. And it's such a beautiful book. But I'm curious what the reaction has been from your grandkids, from the other kids that have their hands on this book, and then also from the moms and the women that are reading it, because it's a really sweet book. And then at the end, it kind of gives you a gut punch of like, oh, who was I born to be? So talk to me. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, it's been surprising, as in that kind of delightful kind of way. And I don't know if you've been a part of things where you just feel like, the universe is flowing and you're like on for the ride, and I feel like I've jumped on something, just talking to a woman this week about doing an event with her for women. And we were just talking about the year and of hopefulness. I call often I talk about life as a both and kind of thing in life. You have the grief, but then you have the joy. That's how most of life is, kind of both and. And I think I didn't realize that this book would enter into this year of hopefulness for women and not just girls. And so the book has been, like you talk about your boys liking it. The things that boys say to me is amazing. And reading it, I've read it in elementary schools, and, a boy raising his hand and saying, why couldn't a girl be a warrior back then? And I'm like, oh, good question, and them saying to me, of who they want to be. It's been very interesting kind of across the board. But to your point, it has been surprisingly one of those books that my friends have said, this is those books that are written for children, but the lucky adults that are reading it are going, "Oh, I'm going to start crying." How you've read those books. I have them that I have all stacked up in my house that I'm like, "Oh, that was for me." And I think I think it's jumped in on this thing of this year. It's very interesting. I didn't know it would be, but I every year I'm a big nerd reader. I read all kinds of stuff. And so every year I pick kind of a different thing to read. And a couple of years I've read only people of color. And this year, January, I decided to read only women authors, not related to Joan of Art, just I need to be more supportive of my sisters that are authors and trying to make a living at that. And so it's been very interesting. And then to see the theme of this women and the conversations with girls about the book. And I wanted to tell you that at the end of the book, I do a coloring activity with them. And I thought I'd show it to you. And it's been very interesting to have adults talk about this too. And so in the book, there is one of the first pages is Joan looking up at a famous painting in a museum. And so we do this coloring activity where we leave the frame blank and then we hand it out to children and we say, what are you bravely called to do? And the first time I did it, I just thought, are they going to get it? Do they get, are they going to pause? I mean, Amy, it was immediate. Boys and girls just right to the table, drawing in who they were called to be, writing in. And I wanted to read to you some of them because the things that they say, I mean, it's so hopeful. These are ones from just girls. Okay. So boys are amazing things, but I want to tell you about the girls thing.
Okay.
So, not even flinching, just looking up at me, telling me an architect, a policeman, that's a discussion right there, that title, policeman for a girl, a librarian, cheerleader. I was like, oh, we need cheerleaders for each other. A veterinarian, an artist, a writer. I loved it. And they spelled their name wrong. I can't spell. I'm a writer and people make fun of that I can't spell. And so I loved that they wrote the word writer incorrectly. And I was like, you're going to be a writer. You're a creator.
That's right. That's why we have editors. I love that.
And then this was my favorite one, is that this little girl said it with all seriousness. I mean, they're, children, they just say what they think. She said, I'm going to be a cake taster.
Gosh, I love her life.
I was like, I said to her, I will do this together. We will do this together.
Yeah.
So then lastly is that this is a conversation after, the conversation, which is always the great thing, with one of my granddaughters. And she said, they call me Grammy. And she said, Grammy, I want to be in the WNBA. And then, as I said, because of Vice President Harris running for office, this has created great conversations with my granddaughters. And so my granddaughter said, why is it called the WNBA? And then the one for women, and then the one that's for men is just the NBA. Why is it called that, Grammy? And I just thought, thank you for spurring on these conversations to girls, because they were saying to me, we might have our first woman president ever in our time. And, if I could vote, I would vote for her. And, these conversations of hopeful conversations in the midst of what they know is reality, is the patriarchy, the NBA and the W. I never thought about it. I never thought of great conversations with girls. And then 2 events I've done, or one I'm going to do and one I did with women, where very powerful of what they drew at the end that they were called to be. And like I said, the tiers of, again, the age range was wide. And hearing people say, I want to be brave, to be this. And to think, that, wait, I think you're the bravest, smartest person I know, and yet they're being very vulnerable and honest about like, actually, this is who I want to be. And I don't want to be that like Joan of Art was dealing with. I don't want to be a warrior. I don't want to be what people think, what people named me to be. I want to be this. It's a struggle for all of us, to be our true selves.
And I love the frequency of kids. I think they're coming in at a higher frequency these days too. They just, I mean, I say this momming little boys, right now. I'm amazed at how courageous and beautiful. And anyway, I love watching. Yeah, I'm sure you love this exercise, being with kids and just being like, you want to be an architect, you want to taste cakes. Like, I love that. And I always wonder, at what age do we stop declaring those dreams? Like, at what age have we moved ourselves out of, reality versus what we want, and then to come back to it, as you're helping these women doing these like bigger conversations, to say, how do we come back to your true self and like what you really desire? And it usually comes with tears, right? Your kids are just yelling it out, and your women's groups are having to like dig deep to get there. What are you seeing? Because I do believe, the divine feminine is rising. This is such an important time. And we need the masculine too. We need
Yes.
really good men. So we need both. But right now, women are starting to step up and say, hey, we're here to take up space. We're here to have these big conversations. We're here to smash things. But what age or where is this break happening? What are you seeing as you're working through this in this unofficial research that you're doing with your book?
Yeah. I don't, I'm not an expert on that. It's what I'm watching, and I'm trying to be hopeful. Again, the conundrum, the both and is that, to your point there, yes, we see the divine feminine, we see the woman rising, but it's because there's such great need. I mean, Amy, I live in Texas, which is, people see it as so the economy is great, that, so much great. We are the second worst state for women to live in. And so, and it's like, and again, that it could be despairing, and, and so out of despair comes the need and the great hope for what you're seeing, that what we're observing as the rising of, okay, we're needed. We're called to be more of what we're more comfortable with. And like you say, our brothers, these men that are saying, yes, this is wrong, from the little boys in the audience say, wait, what, tell us more. I don't know what the age is, and I would like to smash all of those age, when someone says to them the things that were said to me. I mean, the things, I couldn't have been any more of an awkward child that didn't fit in. So, I think Joan is my story. I think, certainly I don't claim to be Joan of Arc, but, not wanting to be what I was supposed to be, as a child, the patriarchy or the women are less, it goes deep in my family of origin, even into the religion that I was raised in. Supposedly God created, all humankind, and yet women were second, and still are, and, that's the both and is going, that shut down a person like me, a woman like me who wanted to lead and who felt called to lead and have a story or a sermon to other women that you can, and then to be shut down, and I don't know when I started hearing, and that you start hearing those negative, the shut down vibes,
It's subtle too.
Oh,
It's part of it is just society in general. And I, I don't know Idaho is a similar state to Texas in a lot of ways. But, I think just about America in general, we don't honor mothers. We don't look at our kids, and say, how do we, that's why I quit my job to start my own business, is because I really wanted to be with my baby, and childcare in Idaho was so horrendous that I couldn't make it work. It didn't align for me. And I just think it was the last thing that anyone ever thought of, and in a lot of these states and in America in general, right? We don't care about this piece. And so when I think about women smashing things, part of it is just, how do we have that conversation of, this matters, right? The next generation matters, and women absolutely matter, however they choose to live their life. And it gets sticky really quick, because people have a lot of different ways that they're viewing the world, their perceptions. And I think coming back to this idea of, what were you born to do and how can you be brave in that, is such a beautiful place to start.
Yeah.
Because, we can't, systems are hard to break, but we can always come back to ourselves and say, how can we co-create a life that we want, and then help make it better for other women around us? And so that's what I love about your book specifically.
And I think we can do it, it takes a community. And that's what the book talks about, is that she could never do this alone. It was teachers, that don't get celebrated, which is often a woman, and, teachers saying to her, calling her for more, and then her friends. It really is about community. And I intentionally, didn't make it, or the publisher and I decided not to make it just girls in the story. To have this amazing friend that was a boy, saying to her, what are you talking about? You're the best artist we know. How can you not be yourself? And it's interesting, Amy, that I was going to show you, at least, that the kids, how you've hit something is kids' reactions to a book. And so in reading it, there's a page that is the children's favorite page of the book. And this is because the community, her community, recognized this in her. They showed her art. She said, she said, which all kids react to this word in there. When I say stupid, she feels stupid. And all the kids say, you're not supposed to say
That's
that.
a naughty word.
They say that's the S word. I was like, it's the S word? What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So smashing, maybe that's the S word. But yeah, I wanted to show you that this is the page. That this page of all her art says a lot more, than just beautiful art from my amazing illustrator, who is a young mom and who's making a living being an illustrator, from Bloom, Brooke, but is then saying, that's my favorite drawing. That's this, and literally the first child that did it, I didn't know what he was doing, but he walked up in the story time to the book and pointed, came out of the crowd and just pointed to it and said, I love an owl, and I just thought, that we could keep on being like that. Like, it's just not silly that I like, or the girl that said, I liked a dinosaur, coming out of our gender roles, or the boy that said, I love the rainbow. The rainbow is my favorite thing. Yeah. It's just, we need that community. And I was just thinking of it, that for you and I, we also are doing it one human being at a time. You have two, that you're trying to do that for. I had, have two sons, that they would say, that, or I would say they're my best feminist, in my world, and then these precious, just to keep saying to them. And that makes a difference, one person at a time.
Yes.
So I think it's a huge difference in the universe, to take, the one, it's very important.
Yeah. And it requires, we made this point earlier, but it requires good men to be doing this work too, right? I'm so grateful. I was talking to a friend about that today. I was like, I'm so grateful for my husband and the way he's allowed me to change and grow throughout our marriage, and just allow these different iterations of ourselves as we shed layers and, programming and the things that, we've grown up with. And I think that's really important. I do love that part in Lisa and I are talking about this part in her book, which you'll have to get this book because it's short, it's sweet, it's so good. So we won't give all the things away, but there's this point where the little girl in the book who's named Joan is so sad and her friends rally around her and they bring her art and they show it to her. And you did that very intentionally because we need our other people to be holding up a mirror to us and saying like, remember who you are. And that's a powerful exercise in friendship too, to be that person for the other people in our lives. So I think that's a huge part of your book too, that we just talked about that I just wanted to explain real quick.
Great. Thank you. I think of, when you come to, like you making a change in your life and doing this, when we come to the things that we know that because the theme of the book is, I wanted to say that to listeners, and you can get the book wherever you buy books. It's a publishing house out of New York, Morehouse Publishing. And so they are, available at your independent bookstore. They're available on Amazon, they're. So I wanted to say that because I think the message when you decide to do something that's big, which is, for a lot of people, it's just, maybe it's getting out of bed, maybe it's making sure the kids have clothes on, that day, those big things that we're doing, I think of I try to look back on, who are the shoulders I stand on, and I do not come to that big thing, and like probably you didn't either, just talking about your husband's support, without the support of the people who came before me and specifically the women who came before me. And I know that I could not even attempt to say the words, I wrote a children's book, not just I want to be a writer. I am a writer and I wrote a children's book without my community. The Bible says that there is a great cloud of witnesses, in heaven cheering us on. And so I think that's the standing on the shoulders of the women who came before me. And our mutual friend, my cousin Jack, his mom, my Aunt Linda, was one of the people in my childhood who she's gone on to be a part of my great cloud of witnesses for me. But she was what we call in the South a steel magnolia, that thing that you love. She was outspoken. She was way ahead of her time as a woman leader. And yet she was this kind, nurturing person who believed in me when I was this awkward, redheaded, really tall, little kid that was just wanted to paint everything there was, and wasn't very good at it. And then when I decided to write, she just cheered me on. Like she literally kept the things that I wrote and would say, you can do this. And so it takes that kind of standing on the shoulders. You know what I mean? I mean, looking back, being grateful and knowing that you would not be here. I know there's people who don't have mirrors. I fortunately lucked out to have those mirrors who said, you can do this. What is it going to take to get this book published? And it was a long journey. And we can talk about the publishing process because that was a whole nother learning of a business for me. But I did want to say that we should look back, because I think I stand on the shoulders of Joan of Arc. She did what she was called to do in her generation. My Aunt Linda did, for that generation. And then there's me now and you, doing what we can for the next generation. So anyway, just want to mention that.
I think that's a really important point because, part of the work I feel like is so important in the world is this reciprocity, right? The law of reciprocity and giving back. And so acknowledging that we've been given so much. And then how do we mentor younger women? How do we make this? And obviously this is your work now, which is so amazing. But about maybe 6 months ago, one of my friends called and she's like, hey, I've got a gal that's working for me. And, do you think you could mentor her? She's pregnant and do you think you could just sit down and have coffee? And I was like, absolutely. And I was like, what an honor that you are asking someone to come love on your employees in a different way. What a beautiful gift for women in business to start saying like, these things matter and we want people to come in and lock arms with people. So I think that's a great point and something that everyone should take and start figuring out how can we mentor others or how can we receive mentorship in a beautiful way right now. So I love that.
Yeah, the word generative is something I've been thinking a lot
Mhm.
about, of just what you're talking about is like, passing it on. And I am so lucky, so lucky. And so I can only do it. And it is also, it's not just passing on your great wisdom, it's also
Oh, for sure.
listening
Yes.
to the next generation and them tell
Yes.
me. I mean, to hear what my grandkids say, they were the best editors of the book, the best. Like, this is boring. Take this out. Or,
Without Grammy.
oh, it was
For that.
amazing. And my editor was like, they are right, and even talking to them about the next book, like, giving them two ideas and they're like, no, this one, and I thought they would never go with it. And they're like, no, you need to keep on talking about other saints that are, that people don't know about. And these are very active, normal children that are kind of healthy. And, generative doesn't just mean, oh, wise one, it's
Absolutely.
listening and to what they have, I think they are the hope. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. A full exchange. Yes.
Yes.
I love that.
That's the perfect word right there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm. That's
It's
so good. I'm excited. Okay. It sounds like you've got some new books in the work, but talk to me about book publishing. If people have an idea and they're like, listen, I want to write a book, a children's book or otherwise, talk me through these steps because this was a new thing for you. How did you get here? How did you find a publisher? Give me just a high level. What should other people be doing if this is of interest to them?
Well, the first thing is what you've heard is true. It's really hard. There is no magic. I think I've been, trying to get the book out to bookstores, doing book readings in bookstores and elementary schools. And one author who's got a new book coming out, she said, how do you do that? Did you just call the bookstore? And I just smiled. I was like, yeah, like 100 times, and then I emailed and then I asked friends to, so publishing is hard work and it's long and it's hard. And the rejections were many, many rejections. I have never published a book before. And unfortunately for publishers today, it is a business for them as well. And so they want to see your platform. They want to see, they're taking a chance on you. And so the humility of saying, I understand you're taking a chance on me. I have never written a book before. I think I would advise that to not think that your idea is the greatest. It's one of, I can't even imagine how many, and it's a hard business for them. A lot of publishers don't do well, if they're not the big ones. So it was the road that everyone talks about. And so I did a lot of research. I got in learning communities. There's actually a society for children's book writers and illustrators, and I'm in a writers guild because I have been a journalist for years and seeking out to learn. And then just, one rejection just means, okay, you just move on. I mean, I contacted many publishing houses and finally found this one that was very generous, took a chance on me and said, let's try it. And I've seen that it's very hard. I've also seen people are very generous and kind. And maybe I'm wondering if it's because it's a children's book, that world is a kinder world. I don't know. It's my own book.
I don't know. I wouldn't think so. There's a lot of children's books out there,
and being open, to be thick-skinned, to be open to, people say, it's my baby, it's my piece of art. And I'm like, you're just not going to go anywhere. If you don't let people, take like I say, the red pen is a gift, having my grandchildren say, you have to take out half of that. Like that's a gift that someone would edit your work. They have to be thick-skinned and not take it personal. If you published, if you don't, and you wrote it for your family, that's great.
Yes.
But so it was the, kind of the road, took a year. And you have to be willing, again, the humility to go through the process and do it well. I had to have a book proposal that took a lot of time. And I paid other women who it is their side hustle, it is their work to be editors of book proposals. There's a community for everything. And, to help you with getting this done if you will do the work. So I don't know if that helps, but
I love that. Oh, I think that's always a good point. You don't have to do it alone. There are people who can help you and get you there faster, right? I think that's the best thing with business coaching. If there's ever things I need, I love hiring coaches these days because I'm like, something I don't know and I need your help. It'll get me there so much faster. So that's a great point. Did you ever think about self-publishing?
I am the least marketing person in the world. And so I just thought like that, it's soul sucking for me to be the one who's out, doing what I'm doing right now, the hustle. And so I thought I can't think of, doing that kind of thing. I think self-publishing, what I've learned in my community is it's come a long way and it's very professional. It just was things. I'm not a techie. I'm not any of that kind of person. Like I am literally the creative, just, get the art out of my head, onto the computer. I have an idea. I want to be with the people who are talking about the thing. It's not what I want to do. And, I hired a friend to make my website, that kind of thing. It's not my thing. I have seen some beautiful self-published books, beautiful ones, because they are all those things. Like they love it. They illustrated it themselves. I think it's a great option. I'm talking to a young woman I met, the great thing about social media is people actually contact you and say, how did you do that? And so being able to help other people, to do it. Yeah.
That's great. What's next for you? It sounds like you have another couple books in the works. Will you keep focusing on children's books or will you change?
Yeah, I think because of what I've seen, the powerfulness of this being and the interest for adult, it's just been very interesting, and like you and I were talking about of just that. And it's funny because I did not remember, but I remember when I led a mentoring group of women years ago, and I would read picture books to them. I literally had not thought about that. And then we would discuss the picture book. And it's like, because sometimes talking about that, your childhood, gets people to open up about themselves. What were you like as a girl, can help us. So I think because this transcends to adults and this season of my life, I really like hanging out with children. I'm going to get to go to Nashville and read it in one of my favorite bookstores. And it's her bookstore. It's an independent bookstore, pronounces books. So lucky. And they connected me with an elementary school that they support as part of their literacy thing. So get to do that in September. And so it's really, I've seen that this is some good vibes, out in the world. And I want to be a part of that right now, this year. So I think I'll continue with the children's thing. And my next idea I'll share with you really quickly, which I've gotten some good feedback on, and I thought it might be seen as irreverent. And so I put it by someone that I knew would be connected with this. I love St. Clair. A lot of people don't know who St. Clair is, and that's why I would write the book. And so Claire was friends with the famous St. Francis of Assisi, and they equally did things for the poor. She was younger, and so she was seen kind of as, a disciple of his, and she adored him. And so I want to talk to children about when you have a friend that is the popular one, so it would be called Claire and Francis as opposed to Francis and Claire, and would be teaching. I've actually got to visit her church in Assisi. And so I have loved Claire for a long time. And I thought, why write a book just about Claire? Why not write a book about teaching children about, when that happens, when one of your siblings or friends, just naturally gets all the attention. and
Love
teaching,
this.
about envy. And so I ran it by someone is friends with that Franciscan brothers and sisters over there. He said they will love it. They will love it so much because Claire is born into a family with a dog named Francis. So it's called Claire and Francis. And Francis gets all the attention all the time. Everyone wants to pet Francis. And he was like, they will love this so much because this will make them smile. So what do you think?
I love it. I think it's so fun. I love those like little life lessons that you can boil them down to just, one single talking point that you can run with. And it's a whole story right there.
Yeah.
I think that'll be fun.
That's what I'm writing about now. And so it's interesting to write again, which is, I love, that's my art. And, as opposed to getting out there hustling to sell my book, that's a different part of that. Well, it's not really a part of me, but
Right.
it's a good thing. It's doing good work.
Well, everything is marketing. I always say that everything is marketing. And so it's nice that you're able to fill your cup and do something that you were born to do while also balancing this other side of how do we then get that message out there in a different way, which isn't always everyone's favorite thing to do.
It's true. I know it. I know that's true. Yeah.
Lesa, this was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. I'll link up your book. Everyone should go buy this. It's so fun. So even if you don't have kids, it's a great book just to have to look at, remind you. Is there one last piece of advice or thing that you want to leave people with that is really close to your heart right now?
Yeah. I love that you say that. And I'm a worder. So I love words. I love reading words. I love writing words. The shorter, the better, for me. And so that's why when I read my book to kids and the adults that are standing behind them, that I want people to know if you feel the heaviness of the both andness of our world, which who doesn't, the grief and the joy, the hard and the good, that the message of the book is be brave and be you. Be you for what that means for one other person, or the big world that you might, your influence, And so I think when I was referring to that Bible verse that says, we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, they're looking down. And then the next part of the verse is what I think, a Joan or an Aunt Linda, my beloved Aunt Linda would say to us, and I never read it like this, is that, it says, so if you have this great cloud of witness, cheering you on, so let us run the race that is set before us. Your race, Amy, my race, Joan of Art's race, Joan of Arc, Joan of Arc did her thing. She ran her race. I think that's the thing, is just we have the support. And if you don't have the support and you need it, you have these two women right here that would support you. And let's run. There's some really good things, brave things happening right now by women. So that's what I would say.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? You said we can find your book anywhere, but where can they find you? Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I love the most social media of Instagram because it's the kindest.
Yeah,
it's the kindest. And so you can find me there on Instagram. I have a website, a really tiny, wonderful website that's just my name, Lesa Engelthaler, which is enough to try to, but if you just Google that, and then I've written op-eds for the newspaper on causes I care about. So you can find me at the Dallas Morning News. I continue to support what they do to do good. I am so grateful, Amy, for this and the people that listen to you and support you, and would love to be of help of anyone who is looking to try to do this kind of thing. I have joined in a great, group of generous and kind people. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time and wisdom. This was just a delight. And I'm so grateful for Jack, one of our favorite people, connecting us. So thank you again, Lesa. And yes, we will link you everywhere. So thank you again.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Business Origin Stories. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Join me on Instagram and make sure to sign up for our weekly email.